What does that mean when it comes to esteeming them higher than ourselves? Who is bringing back indigeneity, if not us? As unfair as it may feel and seem, I think it is the mandate of our generation to let go of the blind obedience that has been inculcated in us and that our parents still seek to enforce. What does that mean when it comes to esteeming them higher than ourselves? Who is bringing back indigeneity, if not us? As unfair as it may feel and seem, I think it is the mandate of our generation to let go of the blind obedience that has been inculcated in us and that our parents still seek to enforce.
Welcome to Rich Queer Aunties, the podcast where relational skills meets radical truth.
We're your hosts, Christabel and Kachi, partners in life, in healing, and in calling things what they are.
Around here, we believe that liberation lives in how we show up for ourselves and each other.
Every episode, we get honest about conflict, care, culture, and connection, especially for those of us navigating life at the intersections of Blackness, queerness, and diaspora.
So take a breath. You're in good company. Let's get into it.
So I wrote an article this week on my Substack because I went down a rabbit hole trying to figure out what is our history? Like, what is our indigenous history that has not been corrupted by colonialism and white supremacy? And the reason why this even came up was because I wrote a post on Instagram talking about how I was having this conversation with my mom about how we're looking up to her generation for indigenous child rearing techniques. Like, we're holding them to account for things like beating us and insulting us and things like that. And she essentially told me that she feels strongly that we should not be looking up to them for indigenous ways of raising children because they don't know. Their generation don't know, right? So I made that post. Several people came in saying, oh, African indigenous practices are also not great. That they think that we must have beaten our children way back when. Otherwise, why is it so prevalent? It cannot be the white man. We cannot put everything on colonialism. And I mean, of course, like, I knew within me that was bullshit. But I was like, okay, you know what? Let's go do some research because, I mean, even I get angry about not knowing for sure. And that is, again, the function of colonialism and white supremacy, that we weren't taught these things and we don't know it by rote. But I went down a rabbit hole and I dug up some stuff. And it was a really good exercise, and it's really just the beginning. So you read the post today, and then we decided to record this podcast. What did you think of the post?
I mean, I will say, first of all, that for the first act of defense that somebody would say to your not like inherent knowledge or even just your curiosity is to defend a white man first and then say we were bad. For the mere fact that that is the baseline of your own indigeneity, is that what you were doing was bad. So now your identity is subject to being corrected. Instead of like, oh yeah, I too am curious. I too don't know.
Yeah.
The mere like confidence to say that just baffles me. And yes, to your post, we don't know.
Yeah.
And for your mother to have such insight and courage to say, hey, don't look at us. So my parents would never say anything like that. They will staunchly say, I know. In fact, you should obey me. You should respect me. You should be coming to me to find that knowledge. And whatever I give you is truth.
I mean, I gotta say that I must have caught her in a good day because she's not always that way.
Yeah.
I think it's also like now that I'm 40 and she's about to turn 70, we're at a place and we've spent the last decade trying to be able to have these conversations, because yes, that was her too at some point, where she was just like, Africa, ways of rearing children are superior, spare the rod, spoil the child, all those things. She used to also give those excuses as to how they raise children. And, you know, her excuse would always be like, oh, look at the Americans who don't discipline their children. Look at children and parents don't even talk to each other. So she's been there. So I think really I get more curious, and then I can approach these subjects from a place of just like, okay, you know, it's crazy to be whooping your children, like, because they don't know what children are not supposed to know, right? You know, that's crazy. And then I think it allows us to come to a place of just like, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know? And then we can have those conversations.
Yeah. I think like your mother has come across like, yeah, that is kind of crazy. It doesn't make sense that would be the way to raise children, as if it worked for her, as if it worked for anybody.
For anybody.
Really. And there's this panic that I witness when adults don't know something. They try their best to make sure that you don't find out that they don't know. Because I knew as a young kid that with all the beatings and all the discipline, I knew that it didn't help. Like, as a child, you already know that concept very strongly. So when I was reading your post, it just felt refreshing, you know, that we really have built our whole identity post being groomed by Western ideology, by colonial ideology. Our spirituality is demonized again, as this is the foundation of our birth, is that we are bad inherently. All ties to the genesis of Adam and Eve and humanity, all ties into that whole ideology. You're a sin first, and then you repent in order to become good and worthy for some prize after you die. This story, this narrative is so embedded into the African subconscious that it's like now feels like a birthright. The more you know about that ideology, the more African you are, the more indigenous you are. And it's so like, it's like a cancer. It's so deeply rooted. It feels like you're fighting a brick wall. It feels like you're coming against this unknown entity that was neither part of us, but without it, it's like the lack of not realizing yourself outside of that can be destabilizing. So when you have children and these children are confronting you about their own indigeneity and you can't even give them access to that, that's a lot. You know?
So I wanted to pull up the article that I did write. And let's go back. Let's look at this timeline, because I think what I want to do in any of these discourses is that to be clear that we have a common enemy, and that enemy is colonialism, it's white supremacy, it's the Western world, right? It's not our parents, it's not their parents, it's not us. Like, when it comes, do we all have some level of culpability as far as like we're responsible to teaching ourselves the things we don't know? Yes. And there is the matter of resources. There's the matter of time. There's the matter of education. There's the matter of poverty. There's the matter of just like surviving, right? And I think objectively we can say that when we look back, we have more free time, more resources, more education, more access than our parents did.
Absolutely.
So I guess like going into my 40s or being in my 40s now, I am just curious about what people are going to say 100 years from now about our generation, about me as a future ancestor. What is my work? Like, what does that decoloniality looks like? Because decolonization is the bigger process of I forget who said this, but I'm going to include it in the caption. But decolonization is just like the bigger process of chasing the white man away.
Yes.
And decoloniality is removing the white man from inside us. Because I do think that carceral and punitive ways of navigating these conversations are, again, exemplification of white supremacy. So I want this episode to be partly educational, partly dialogue. So we're going to start with, what is the timeline? How far ago is that?
How far back?
How far back have we had access to indigenous practices? Before you read the article, how many generations would you have guessed?
My grandmother's grandmother.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's very generous. I was looking literally back at just my great-grandparents.
Okay.
Like my grandmother's mother. Yes. I would have thought that they retained some level of indigenous practices, indigenous child rearing practices, indigenous queer identity, gender identity. But it is so much further. And it is so far back, it is actually unimaginable. White people have been in touch with Africa, at least Igbo land, since the 1500s, during the transatlantic slave trade, right? They were there 1500s through the early 1800s. So that's 300 years of people being kidnapped, killed, and shipped across an ocean. And this was before formal colonization even began. And formal colonization began in the 1870s because the British arrived in significant numbers in Igbo land in 1870s. And then the formal colonization followed the Berlin Conference in 1884, ranging from 1889 to 1914. Nigeria was named and made a unified colony in 1914. So do you see, like, from the 1500s to the 1800s was the transatlantic slave trade. From the 1870s to 1914, you had, formal colonization. And then you have Nigeria not having achieved independence until 1960 something, right? So literally 500 years is how long ago? That's 5 generations. We're going back 5 generations of people who were untouched, unmarred, uncorrupted by Western civilization.
Okay. That brings some real context to this conversation.
Yeah. And so my mom grew up in Nigeria during the Biafran War in 1960s.
Same with my parents.
Right?
Too. Yeah.
Her father went to British school. He learned English. He had dealings with the British. He admired British architecture so much that he built the first story building in their hometown. And, the remains of it today is a heritage site. So my mom was telling me that her father prohibited them from doing anything involving African indigenous spirituality or denane. Like any Igbo spiritual practices, my mom's father and her mother, my grandparents, would warn them children away from the people who were still practicing to some extent in the village. Because yes, there were people who kept practicing. There were people who were just like, we're going to hold on to our indigenous practices. And they did all the way till now. But they were ostracized. They were called bush. They were called demonic. They were just like made the outcasts in the village. So now, okay, so we're thinking, if we're talking about specifically about child rearing, right? And we're saying, where did beating come from? How far ago was it? How long ago was it? Has it always been that way? And that's when I realized and I discovered that the British had institutionalized the beating of children in boarding schools, sanctioned by the missionaries. I mean, by the church. That is how they maintained like order over children. Meanwhile, in Igbo land, for instance, children were revered as gods and ancestors because the Igbos believe in reincarnation.
Yeah.
So the premise is that how dare you touch a sacred being who came back from the land of the gods, from the land of the spirits? Then the missionaries came, the slave traders came and introduced these harsh and barbaric ways that they were already practicing in their own land. This is how they were treating their children in their own land. And so they came and they essentially, because children were not revered in the West, they thought that Africans were not to be revered either. They started beating Africans like they were beating the children. And literally that is how it became adopted into the culture over 500 years. Right? So when I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at it from the perspective of, I want to have conversations about re-indigenization. And we cannot have those conversations if we don't even know what that is. If we're still thinking that, our ancestors must have beaten children. We just take it as, like you said, like that's just, that must be what it is.
Yeah. I feel like the mere act of beating someone, like being so callous to act out that behavior onto a living being cannot be from a place of love or care or nurturing. Like you're saying, it's an act of obedience. They want order, they want structure. They beat adults. They instructed adults to then beat children. And
they
then
wanted to break
they
people.
Essentially break somebody's spirit is to beat them to the point where they will be crying for you to stop or for mercy to like stop it from happening, to still live, to survive. And whatever it would take to not get beat is probably what they would be aligning themselves to stay in order, to be away from the whip. And to hear that they, the British institutionalized corporal punishment in secondary school, it reminded me of the kind of punishment I received mostly at the hands of teachers in school. There were some times my grandmother beat me, but most of my beatings came from all of the disciplinarians, the teachers, the headmistress, everybody. It was just like, it was a beating frenzy. It got to a point where I actually acted on like not flinching, not being able to be broken by it, to ascend to a place where the pain wouldn't break my spirit.
Absolutely. And let me read this paragraph for you. It says, the Igbo cosmology held that children were reincarnated ancestors, sacred beings arriving with knowledge from the spirit world. Their first hairs and nail clippings were treated as spiritual objects, buried with ceremony. Their naming, which happened 28 days after birth, was the most elaborate and religiously significant ritual in Igbo life. I'm reading this like I didn't write it, but a community event where ancestors were honored, the child welcomed into the living world with collective witness. Some communities believe that if you struck a child harshly, you could scare their soul back to the spirit world. You could lose them that way. And it continues to say the British model of child rearing installed through those schools from the 1870s onwards was built on the premise that children were unruly by nature and required correction. That premise came directly from a strand of Protestant Christianity that understood the child as inherently sinful, requiring discipline to become acceptable. The cane was not incidental to that model. It was theological. Britain did not remove corporal punishment from its own state schools until 1986. What it exported to its colonies before that was the model it was still running at home.
And it's still being institutionalized today. Still.
I'm saying, they officially banned it in 1986, but I just want to pause to say the contrast between those beliefs around children, it should make us shudder. Anybody of African descent who has been dealt corporal punishment by their parents, by their caregivers, should pause and really understand viscerally and somatically that was not of us. It never was. The way we viewed children, the way our ancestors viewed children, was in direct opposition to how Britain and other Western countries viewed children. Whereas we viewed them as sacred, they viewed them as inherently sinful. So what was transmitted to our parents, therefore, was not ancient Igbo tradition. It was colonial management practices repackaged as African culture. So while the confusion is understandable, the conflation of the two is wrong and unacceptable.
It's really that the desensitization to brutality that keeps this kind of practice ongoing, that a person can abuse someone and feel nothing. That's pure savagery. And that's very chilling in my spirit.
And that's what they accused us of, because we did not wear clothes or our breasts were free. Because they accused us of savagery.
Because we were part of nature.
Because we had never seen a mirror. Because we used the stream as
our reflection, and we used people as our reflection, and we used the land as our reflection.
And because we were welcoming as a people to them, they had the opportunity to subjugate us to such an extent that we don't even know what is ours.
But they knew we knew what was ours. They knew how we knew what was ours. And
today.
Then absolutely today. Yeah. Before all the institutionalization happened, they knew how we revered children. That's why they wanted to make sure that we forget.
Yeah. It was confusing to them, probably. How can you let these kids run around?
Yes, I see confusion, but I also see that they knew it was an act of resistance to them being in our society.
Yeah.
Confusion feels so avoidant of accountability.
Yeah.
Look, I didn't know. And no, they knew.
No, I hear you.
No,
I hear you in that.
They know.
Yeah. And I think also for me, outside of really understanding who the common enemy is and what we're all what we should all be fighting against, instead of just
preaching the same nonsense.
Outside of that, it's what is the practical application today, right? if we're in a space where we're just saying, okay, our parents, which is just like a generation ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, should have known better. And we're seeing that, okay, there are 500 years, at least 400 years removed from knowing better.
Yeah.
What does that mean when it comes to esteeming them higher than ourselves? Who is bringing back indigeneity, if not us? As unfair as it may feel and seem, I think it is the mandate of our generation to let go of the blind obedience that has been inculcated in us and that our parents still seek to enforce. We have to repudiate that. We have to let go of that. We have to say, my dear, whatever version of it is not our culture, it is not our culture not to beat children, whatever version of that you're spewing is corrupted to such an extent that it is physically like disgusting. So you cannot tell me what is African culture when you're still scared of your ancestral gods. You cannot tell me what is African culture when I try to speak to you about reincarnation, which was believed and like revered for millennia prior to the 1500s. And you're just so scared. You cannot tell me African culture if all you have to say is Jesus this, Jesus that. You don't have a leg to stand on. And taking the stance in our lives as the new adult, as the future ancestors, the reason why it feels so important is that so we can actually get to work. So we can actually get to work unlearning.
Yeah.
So that we are not hiding in the closet because we feel like being queer is not African. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we can take back the reins from our colonial masters because we have a level of freedom that we have not had in 500 years. Today, we're not dependent on our parents financially. We have access to resources. You know what? While they didn't let us record our own history, they recorded it.
Mm-hmm.
They recorded it.
There's books there.
You know,
written.
as much as it's probably imbued by their own bias, not probably, as much as it's imbued by their own bias, it's still something. It's still something we can look back at and say, okay, this is what gender looked like in our society.
This is how gender expression or just expression looked like in our society.
Was it even there? Was there gender? Was gender a thing? Was it not? This is what queerness looked like. This is how children were treated. So then it informs how we treat our children.
Yeah.
If we have them. The whole colonial hierarchical collectivism that we practice, where the men are the top, the elders are the top, the women are below that, the children are at the bottom, the disabled, the queer, the seers, the DBS, all of them are just
the
basically,
artists.
the artists are basically erased. That was not the way it was. It was a circular organization. It wasn't a hierarchical one.
Yeah.
When we talk about matriarchy, that's what we talk about, where the needs of the children and the the elderly and the
whole community
and
everybody
are prioritized. So I feel so passionately about this work that is our mandate by our ancestors prior to the 1500s, who and really shout out to even those after that who did everything in their power to hold on to, this sacred wisdom.
Yeah.
And so what is the work we're doing to actually seek it? after we've gone to these their universities and gotten all these their degrees and all their accolades, when was the last time you went to your village? When was the last time you went and asked after the gods? And as I ask you this, I ask myself this. What is keeping us? Because it sure can't be the white man's Jesus. It sure can't be. We cannot be so attached to homophobia and toxic patriarchy and femicide and all this stuff that we won't go seek how to make amends and make things right again. What are you thinking?
I'm speechless.
Yeah.
Truly. Like, I want to encourage people to invest more in learning about African art, African knowledge, African history, their own history, their own lineage, their own name, even just to start there. If you are someone that is carrying a family name that is not English, try to investigate what is the lineage of this name, the meaning. How was it passed down through your family members? Ask the family members now. Start, get them to scratch their memory and start giving you the answers that you want. It may sound like it's just coming out of nowhere, but just the mere act of breaking or disrupting this, let's just be good Africans, let's just be good civilized, colonized people. That conversation needs to shake up a little bit. And doing your own personal investigation, because there's so much knowledge out there about your heritage, your history in all the books, whether it's in libraries or online. Start doing that personal investigation and excavate yourself.
And like my special interest and hyperfixation, I would say, and my specialty and expertise is relational skills. And that's even what got me started. And I think people enter this work from many different interests.
Yeah.
And I like what you said about like look into the arts and, things like that. For me, I think I kept hearing from a lot of Africans, especially, but also a lot of people from the global majority, this whole thing about living double lives, right? Like they can't show up as themselves. They see me with tattoos and they're like, how, because of parents, because of family, because of culture. And it makes me really deeply sad because the parents and culture and all these things you're talking about ain't even yours.
Yeah.
Ain't even yours.
It's like you treat them as your colonial masters.
Still.
Which is so
and
insidious.
It's so maddening to me. Oh. If you can look at me with my tattoos as an African woman and you cannot see where it comes from, and you think it is a rebellion versus like coming home.
Yeah.
That is sad. That is really sad. Because all you have to do is look at there are some pockets of African tribes and indigenous tribes all around the world depicted in books, but also still existing. The Maasai and so many others. You see the body modification. You see that stretching your earlobe is not a new alt Western practice. You see that scarification and body art and tattooing is not something you should be so shocked to see on an African body. So things like that, right? So then, people would maybe in beginning of their journey, they'll get that one little tattoo and then they hide it from their parents. And literally the purpose of this conversation for me is to tell you that you hiding your tattoo from your parents who are African or like, of the global majority is in service of whiteness. Which is the whole thing, like de-pedestalize your parents. depedestalize them. You need to be able to go in there and show up as yourself. It's not respectful to show up only as the white person said you can show up. That's not respect. That is soul death. I don't even use words like that, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Like you're killing your own spirit over and over again beyond your ancestors that were tossed into the oceans and beaten and hung on trees so that they do not look like that. Right? And because that's how people are still showing up in their relationships. That's how you're still showing up in your relationships. You're performing whiteness. When you police each other, when you police the people you're in relationship with, just like you were policed by your parents, like they were policed by theirs and theirs and theirs 500 years back. You're replicating the same master's tool, like you're just continuing their work for them. And I want you to stop. I want you to show up true. And if you don't know what truth feels or looks like, go do some excavation. Go do some study. It is incumbent upon you to do that work. Stop being fucking like
spoon-fed. Coddled.
It's pissing me and my homies off. Me and my homegirls don't like it. You deserve better of yourself. They have taken enough from us. So, listen, I don't even talk to you like this, but I'm just letting you know that's how serious it is. I need you to go learn the last time, like, an ancestor of yours got a tattoo. Figure out what that marking is. Go look at it. Go study it. What does it bring up for you in your body? Ain't nobody telling you to go get tattoos if you don't want it, but at least don't be scared of it. Dare to look at it.
Yeah. That's like that's like the weapon that's used to keep you in line, is to be afraid of your own self and your own mind.
Because of Jesus Christ.
And your own identity. In case they catch you and beat you and burn you. And all that is a fantasy that we have built in our head to keep protecting ourselves from ourselves.
It might have happened.
Our feelings.
Yes. There is a somatic element to it.
And
there's a whole body.
All that.
It's remembering and just still being scared.
Yeah.
But wake it up.
Feel through it. Feel through it multiple times so that it doesn't panic you when you see it again and again and again. But it's the keeping that blind eye away from your own identity that is bringing up this mess and disconnection from self and from other people and this performativeness of self.
And it's them people who are homophobic, who are over here talking mad shit
about other people who want to be themselves and express themselves. Meanwhile, they've suppressed themselves.
Has been a part of our...
Before it was even labeled queerness. It was fluidity. Because nature doesn't multiply itself the same way every time. There will always be comma. There will always be diversity. It's natural.
Maybe it is it comma or
as
is
in
it just...
it's not straight.
Yeah.
Nature is queer as fuck.
So
okay.
It sounds like we have more things to talk about. We have so much more to go as we read and as we research, as we come back into that knowledge and as we live that knowledge. I can't wait to have the next couple of episodes approach gender, queerness.
Yeah.
Maybe we can go into child rearing some more. Consider this the first
part of many
conversations on what does it look like to re-indigenize ourselves.
Yeah.
And individuate and differentiate from our parents.
Yeah.
And learn how to be disobedient.
Yeah. And then learn how to integrate.
Yes.
As your full self.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to Rich Queer Aunties. If this moved something in you, share it with someone you love.
And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or slide into our DMs with your reflections.
You can find us on Instagram and everywhere on social media. Rich Queer Aunties, Christabel Minta Galloway, King Kachi. Thank you for being with us.